The lawyer for two of Paul Bernardo's victims has confirmed that the killer has a preliminary hearing to obtain day parole this March. Bernardo was convicted in 1995 of murdering the teens. He became eligible for day parole after serving 22 years, despite his dangerous offender designation. Day parole would allow Bernardo to leave the prison during set times and then return at night. Joining us for more on this is Tim Danson, the lawyer representing the families of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, two of the victims. And thank you very much, Mr. Danson, for joining us.
My pleasure.
So tell me, because what I guess Canada is wondering when they hear that there's a parole hearing coming up in March, what are the chances of Paul Bernardo getting parole granted?
I genuinely believe that the chances of Paul Bernardo getting parole now or any time in the future is somewhere between 0 and nil. I think we need to appreciate that the laws are designed for offenders at large, and parole eligibility simply means under the law that you're eligible to apply for parole. But I think that there's no chance that he will be successful. Having said that, and speaking with the families, we take nothing for granted. We will be ever so vigilant. We will be preparing the victim impact statements and participating in the parole hearing. But nevertheless, I'm confident that he will not be successful. And the other issue, which you referred to in your introduction, is this dangerous offender designation. Let's remember, the dangerous offender designation is a very significant finding. And before the parole board considers the normal criteria for parole eligibility, our view is that they must deal with the dangerous offender designation, that Paul Bernardo will have to put forward compelling and reliable evidence, medical evidence, that would displace the evidence that was put forward over 20 years ago, for which he was found to be a dangerous offender. And we also need to understand that the dangerous offender designation for Paul Bernardo is not just based on his sadistic and brutal murders of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey, which of course is horrific in and of itself, but it also includes all the factual circumstances around the Scarborough rape victims. And so, there's a very significant evidentiary record supporting that dangerous offender designation, and not only must that be dealt with first, in our view, I know there's people who disagree with me, but any evidence that Paul Bernardo puts forward must be public, it must be transparent, and we must not allow him or Corrections Canada or the parole board to hide behind privacy legislation so that we don't have this transparent hearing.
And Mr. Danson, have you spoken with the families and how they're coping with having to go through these headlines yet again?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with the Frenches last night. I haven't been able to reach the Mahaffeys, but we've had earlier hearings that never happened. So who knows if that'll happen again in March? But I've spoken with the Mahaffeys when we were concerned about earlier hearings. And no, they're devastated. It's gut-wrenching. It's hard to believe that they have to confront this all over again, that they have to disclose in a public hearing, the most private feelings and emotions, which is very difficult. And just reliving the entire experience again. They have moved on in a certain way. Of course, a day doesn't go by that they don't think of their daughters. But they've learned to adapt to the extent that it's humanly possible. And then something like this just brings it all up again, and it's torture for them. But they appreciate that this is the legal process. We knew this day would come. And I think what overtakes them is to still be there for their daughters and to make sure that Paul Bernardo doesn't get out. So as difficult and gut-wrenching and devastating as it is, they will find the internal strength to rise to the occasion and be there for their daughters. It'll be tough being in the same room as Paul Bernardo, but they'll be ready. But it's tough on them for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, Tim Danson, thank you very much for your time. Most appreciated.
Thank you very much.